I've broken my original motorway video down into sections to make it easier to digest. This is part 2, driving safely on the motorway, which covers lanes, overtaking, breakdown procedures and smart motorways.
Now we've safely joined the motorway, let's look at how we drive safely on it. We need to make good progress. If we drive too slowly or slow suddenly, it will catch out people behind us. Drive on the left, so stay left unless you're overtaking or unless road markings tell you need another lane. As the vehicle in front passes a fixed point like this bridge, say only a fool breaks the 2-second rule. If you reach the same point before you can finish saying it, then you're too close to the vehicle in front. Plan ahead. Lorries are limited to 60 miles an hour, so we're going to need to overtake it. Plan early. Check your mirrors. It's not currently safe to change lanes, but it will be behind this red car, provided this white van doesn't move across into lane number 2. Now the red car's passed, check again. There's the white van, so it is safe. Change lanes smoothly with gentle steering. There's no rush. Maintain speed as you change lanes. Now accelerate past the lorry. Don't cut back in. You need to be well ahead of the vehicle you've just overtaken before you look for a safe opportunity to return back to the left lane. Make sure you can see both headlights on both your main mirror and your left mirror before you consider returning to the left lane, and maintain speed while you change lanes. You don't want to overtake somebody and then slow down in front of them. Hopefully you never will be involved in a breakdown on a motorway, but it's important to know the procedure if it should happen. The lane to the left of the solid white line is known as the hard shoulder, such as breaking down, getting a puncture or having a tyre blowout. Here we see a lorry which has broken down and pulled onto the hard shoulder. Notice how it's pulled as far to the left as possible. If you stop on the hard shoulder, you want as much space as possible between your stationary vehicle and the traffic travelling at 60 to 70 miles an hour in lane 1. If you do break down on a motorway, don't try and fix the vehicle yourself, call for assistance. The people coming to help you will need to know where you are. These marker posts appear approximately every 1/10 of a mile along the edge of the hard shoulder. Each post has a unique number on it to identify its location. Make a note of the number on the post nearest to your broken down vehicle. Each post also has a picture of a phone and an arrow telling you which way the nearest phone is, so you know which way to walk. Wherever possible, walk on the grass verge rather than on the hard shoulder. Remember, you've got traffic rushing past you at 60 to 70 miles an hour, and the wind from these vehicles can knock you off your feet quite easily. The emergency phones have orange panels on them to make them highly visible, and they're located approximately every mile along the hard shoulder. When using an emergency phone, stand on the far side of the barrier away from the hard shoulder. You never know when another vehicle is going to want to pull onto the hard shoulder. If you have an emergency when driving and need to use the hard shoulder, first put your hazard lights on. This warns traffic behind you that you may be slowing down and using the hard shoulder. Then gently steer yourself into the hard shoulder lane, just like any other lane change. Once you're on the hard shoulder, lose speed. Ideally, try not to slow down on the main carriageway before you're on the hard shoulder, as it can catch out people behind you. So use the hard shoulder as a deceleration lane and try to stop next to or very close to an emergency phone so you don't have to walk too far on the hard shoulder. If you can't stop your vehicle near an emergency phone, then use the nearest marker post to identify which way you need to walk to the nearest phone. In this clip, notice how close the lorry is to the solid white line. He's right in the edge of his lane and almost drifting onto the hard shoulder. Lorries often do drift accidentally onto the hard shoulder before pulling back onto the main carriageway. These people here are not safe at all. This is exactly the wrong way to use the hard shoulder. If a lorry drifts onto the hard shoulder and hits their vehicle at 60 miles an hour, there won't be a lot left of it, or them. If you do stop on the hard shoulder, first get everybody out of the vehicle. Ideally from the passenger side because of all the traffic rushing past on the driver's side. Get everybody completely off the tarmac and onto the grass verge at the side. If anything does hit your stationary vehicle, the debris will be thrown forwards, so make sure you're not standing in that area. Do not attempt to repair the vehicle yourself. Use the nearest emergency phone to call for assistance. If you have to walk to the phone, stay off the carriageway. If there is a barrier, stay on the far side of the barrier away from the carriageway. The hard shoulder of a motorway is not a safe or comfortable place to be, so always check your car's tyres and fluid levels before starting a motorway journey to minimise the risk of breaking down and needing to use the hard shoulder. If the recovery services manage to repair your vehicle and you're able to restart your journey, then use the hard shoulder like a slip lane to build up speed before trying to merge in with the traffic on lane 1 of the motorway. You'll be merging in with traffic travelling at 60 to 70 miles an hour, so build up speed first and find a safe gap. Don't just pull out at 10 miles an hour in front of a lorry that's doing 60. But hopefully you'll never need to use a hard shoulder. Not all motorways have a hard shoulder. Take a look at this 4-lane section of the M3 motorway in Hampshire. There's no space at all on the left-hand side to pull over if we have a problem. The barrier's right beside us. So what we have on these motorways is emergency refuge areas, also known as SOS Laybys. And these are located approximately every 1.5 miles along the carriageway. You'll see information signs like this telling you how far it is to the next emergency refuge area or lay-by. And when you get to one, you'll see the solid line becomes a broken line, indicating that you can pull across. The tarmac is a different colour to make it stand out. And there's a space marked on the floor next to the emergency phone, which is where you're supposed to stop your car. These laybys are only for emergency use, such as a breakdown or being ill. Never use them for a convenience stop to get something out of the boot or to make a phone call, for example. Emergency use only. Notice how short the lay-by is and think about how much you'd need to slow down before you pulled into one if you needed one in an emergency. Look at another example and think about the practicalities of using these emergency refuge areas or SOS laybys. So here we see a lay-by in use, which gives us a better idea of the size of these refuge areas. We would have to slow down before entering this area because it's quite small. So the first thing you do when you know you've got a problem is put your hazard lights on. This alerts drivers behind you that you have a problem and that you could be slowing or stopping. If the refuge is already in use, like this one, you'd have to slow even more because you've got to stop sooner. If there was a lorry already in the refuge, you probably wouldn't be able to fit in. You'd have to skip this one and go to the next one in 1.5 miles. Once you've entered the lay-by, get as far over to the left as possible and stop at the position marked on the ground. Get everybody out of the car and to the far side of the barrier away from the traffic. Follow the instructions on the sign in the refuge area and use the emergency phone to contact the control centre. Follow the instructions of the people in the control centre. Under no circumstances must you try to leave one of these refuge areas without contacting the control centre. They need to stop traffic in lane 1 to create a safe gap for you to pull out into. There's no space in the lay-by for you to build up speed before pulling out into lane 1. And the traffic in lane 1 is likely to be travelling at 60 to 70 miles an hour, so it wouldn't be safe to pull out in front of them without that traffic being stopped in that lane. If you're travelling along the motorway and you see a red X over lane number 1, it means that lane is closed. There could well be a slow-moving vehicle ahead of you pulling out of one of these laybys. So whenever you see a red X over a lane, you need to get out of that lane as soon as it's safe because there will be a hazard ahead and that lane is closed. If you break down between refuge areas and can't make it to the next one, the advice is to put your hazard lights on, get as far over to the left as possible, stay in the car with your seat belts on, and phone 999. Let's hope you never find yourself in that situation.
I hope you found this video useful. If so, please like, comment and subscribe. Part 3 in this series will look at dealing with motorway junctions. In particular, understanding road signs and road markings to help with your planning and awareness, and looking at lane gains and lane drops at junctions. Thanks for watching.